drink, sleep, repeat for the rest of my life.
Konnichiwa. Hajimasu.
Hey. All right.
Cool. And so I'm really excited, Ruth, that you're here today. It's like we have been friends from the moment I entered a dojo, which I think was in 2004, January.
Possibly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you were in London.
Yeah, I think 2003 to 4 I was there.
That's right. You would have come in September, and I'm one of these people who started I saw the class just before Christmas, and it was a closing ceremony, and I joined the first class.
Because I left, I think, in about May or June, so we were only friends in London for like less than 6 months.
Yes, probably. That's probably true. But you have, I remember it because my sensei at the time, our sensei at the time was fierce. Like he was very, very, very grumpy. And I remember feeling super sorry for you because I'd come in with no skills whatsoever. And George pointed to Ruth and said, teach her, she's rubbish. And even a few months later, he said, she's rubbish. And you were still teaching me and didn't give up. So I feel very grateful for it. So I suppose that's how I found Kempo online. Actually, I was just looking to join a gym. It was too expensive at that point for my budget. So I found Kempo, which was £15 a month in London. So that's why I joined it. What's your journey? How did you join it?
So I started at university. I went to university in Glasgow. I grew up in Dundee, which is in the northeast of Scotland. And when I was a kid, I always wanted to do martial art. I think I'd watched the Karate Kid just too many times. But my mum wouldn't let me go to karate. There was a karate club. I used to see them in town walking around in their little white suits going, oh, I want to do that. But my mum wouldn't let me. So when I finally kind of gained freedom and independence and moved to Glasgow to start uni, I looked at all the different martial arts clubs. I was with the intention of trying them all. I thought I'll try karate, I'll try judo. I think there was maybe aikido. Kempo was the first one. It was like on the Monday or something. So I went along and just loved it and just never went to the rest of them, never tried the others, just loved Kempo from the get-go. Just because it encompassed everything, you know, it's how they sell at you when you walk in the door. We do kicking, we do punching, we do throwing, we do grabbing, we do everything. We do massage, like, go sign me up. So yeah, I'd finished, well, yeah, I mean, I was like 19. Because I finished school, we finished school when we were 18, and then I took a year out, and then I started a year later than everyone else. But yeah, it was like 19, 20 when I started.
Oh, that sounds good. And it became your like main social life, from what I can tell, like so many people at uni.
Yeah, I met a few folk through my course, but not many. I did other activities. I did the student newspaper. I met some people through that. But my firm friends that I'm still friends with today were all through the Kempo Club.
And there's something about that, isn't there? There's something about the friendships that you make through Kempo that seem to last. Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but it's sort of, yeah, there's definitely a community that builds up that you can rely on.
I don't really know why. I don't know why it was that and not my course mates or not the paper, because I equally enjoyed all of those things. You know, I was open to friendships in all those places. But for some reason, the Kempo Club was, I mean, I was there 3 times a week. I think we trained 3 times a week. So maybe just getting to know them better, or just being a like-minded group of people. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was just, it felt like home from day one, and it was a place that you could look forward to going, not just to learn the activity, but to meet your friends. And we would all socialise afterwards. There was like, especially on a Saturday, I think Monday was quite late. Thursday we would sometimes go out, but Saturday afternoon we would usually go. Half went to the pub, half went to the coffee shop, because we had some like Muslim students and stuff. So we kind of catered for everyone. So half went to the pub. I was with the coffee shop bunch because I'm not a big drinker. And then we'd often go to the cinema after. So it was a whole day. It was like a day off studies because, you know, it was quite hard going being at uni. So it was like Saturdays, just relaxing, socializing, fun time. And then I can work at my course the rest of the week.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good. And so by the time you got to London, you were a black belt, was that right? So you'd done 3 years or?
Yeah, well, so our degrees are 4-year degrees.
Right.
So I'd been training for 4 years, plus I had worked for a year to save up to get to London. So I'd been training for 5 years by that point, but I was still, was I Shodan or Nidan? I can't remember.
I don't know. I can't
No, I
remember.
can't remember. Can't remember.
I think you were Nidan because we, the club that we met at had quite a lot of black belts. We had 4 black belts who.
I've been training 5 years. I think I did. I think I was. Well, I got black belt within about within the 4-year degree anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've tried. I don't know if it was. I think I can't remember.
That's fair enough. Would you remember what grade you were when you left? Were you Nidan when you left?
Yeah, I never got to Sandan.
Never got to Sandan. Oh wow, I got to Sandan. Yeah.
I know you're outranking now.
Oh wow, look at that. You look tired of Sandan. So there you go. What did you find about London? Because I'm really intrigued. I remember that I did a trip out to Japan in 2005 and then realized that actually where I want to be training is London. And I wonder what that felt like coming from Scotland, where you've got the people that you know very well that you were training with, and then you've got this 8th Dan in London. What did that feel like? And did you do any international trips? Or
I did a trip to Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
Before or after London, I can't remember. I'm terrible. My memory is terrible. I think it was maybe after. I can't remember. That was my only international trip. There was 2 trips to France. We went to France. We went to Paris for some European Taikai. Were you there?
No, it's pre my time with what we always called Porno Sensei because he had the best moustache in the industry. Do you remember him? No, you're like looking blankly. I'm going to cut that.
Yes, the French guy. Yes.
The French guy.
Yes. Well, he had longish hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I went to France, went to Paris, which was actually a really good trip. I'd forgotten all about that, so thank you. And we went to Sweden because we had, I don't know if we still have links to the I don't know if he's still training, Anders Peterson something.
Yeah, they still have a club.
But I did my gap year between school and university in Sweden. So that's why I really wanted to go, to maintain that link. It was a different part of Sweden, but I really wanted to go back. So I took a bunch out for it. It was a fairly small European seminar, but it was really good. Paris was amazing. It was really good. There was 2 trips to Japan organised in my time, but only instructors got funded, and I didn't have the funds. Also, I'm allergic to soya, so a trip to Japan would just be like really difficult. I did not. Yeah, I remember sitting with Mizuno Sensei saying, he's like, I will write you a card, and he wrote down, I am very, very allergic to soya. Take this. I didn't get to go, so. For
those of you who don't know, Mizuno Sensei is our 8th Dan, and he's very, very Japanese. He's lovely, he's very Japanese. He's dropped into one of our online classes and terrified both Ophelia and I once. But yes, him writing anything out for you is quite remarkable, Ruth. You will have heard a squeal when you mentioned Sweden. I don't know if Ophelia's.
Yeah, I felt like maybe I should explain that. I'm actually Swedish.
Wow. Hey.
And so I don't know if you've got any questions about Sweden and training in Sweden, or whether you just don't get quiet.
Not much.
Not
really.
Is it different?
Is it different? Are they weird?
No, we got on really well. We had a great time. It was Karlstad we went to, which is lovely.
Haven't been.
Yeah, because when I lived, I lived in Delsbo, is Hudiksvall, kind of tiny little up in the north east-ish. So the whole south was like a whole mystery to me. It was very interesting to go back and visit a different area. So yeah, we had a really good time training. But much more informal, I think, much more relaxed. But I was quite used to that kind of Swedish way of life before I went, and I think the students that I took over were a bit like, oh, they're calling their senseis by their first names, and they're, you know, just like chilling out in the bar together, and yeah, it was a slightly different formality level.
And was it not like that when you joined in the UK? Was it all like you call your sensei and you?
We didn't in Glasgow so much. We didn't have that. But then our senseis were only second dan, and some of them very recent second dan. So when I came to London, it was a bit of a culture shock for me to find everyone calling everyone sensei, no matter what, and people calling me senpai and mistakenly calling me sensei, and I was like, no. So yeah, it wasn't a thing we did in Glasgow. I think we, as our instructors got up to like third dan and stuff, we were like sort of trying to encourage it, but more for when we went to other seminars or when visitors came, then we wouldn't look like we didn't know what we were doing. So we tried we tried to get that culture going, but I don't know if it took off or not.
We had to have like Martin gather us around before Mr. Sensei was going to come to one of our sessions and be like, guys, when Mr. Sensei is here, can you guys please just behave yourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do little booklets here at Camden, so that I'm hoping if I ever have to do that, I can just give everyone a booklet and say, this is how we're supposed to behave.
Yes.
This is, you know, ignore how we do behave, but this is how we're supposed to behave.
Yeah, I think because we were so far in Glasgow anyway, and I think possibly Sweden at the time, we didn't have a Japanese presence. And I think those clubs who had a Japanese sensei were much more formal and much more in line with the kind of tradition. And those of us who kind of drifted away and kind of let things slide a little bit were not so much.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. That's probably true. And Ruth, sticking to Kempo, you are the only person I know who's had a Kempo wedding of any kind in the UK. And again, I'm just dropping this in. I remember what it like, some of the stories, but no one else knows about it. So I wondered if you could just take us through what that means and what that it looked like for you.
Yeah, so not long after I started Kempo, one of our instructors got married, and our two other instructors at the time were preparing a display for this wedding, and I was very intrigued with this whole idea and like, what on earth is this? And then 6 years later, I'm getting married to someone from the club, and we decide, yeah, let's do the Kempo wedding part. So it's not, I don't know about now, but at the time anyway, it was just after I came back from London. It was 2004 we got married. The Kempo part wasn't the legal part. We still had to do a legal ceremony. So we went to just the registry office in Glasgow. Is a beautiful old kind of Italian building, so it's lovely. So we went there for our actual legal part of the wedding. And then went for a meal, and then we had a reception in a big hall, and more people joined us for the reception. And that's when we did the Kempo part. So it's basically a kind of Buddhist blessing. From what I gathered, it's a Buddhist blessing with some folk doing Kempo at the end. So people prepare what do you call it? Yeah, they prepare an ember. Yeah, sorry, the word went right out of my mind. So there's, and so again, Mizno Sensei was officiating, and he was like, I mean, he's quite, as you know, he's quite strict and can be quite formal and quite by the book, but he was almost like nervous and agitated that we were going to do something wrong. He was determined that we were not going to do anything wrong. Like the thing on the table had to be exactly there, and we had to put this thing here, but you could not touch it before this happened. And we've got all these instructions, and I was like, could we not have practiced this if this is so important, please? You should give us instructions so we can study. So then in the end, we had to like light an incense type thing. And he said, I don't trust you, I'm going to do it for you. So yeah, it's a lovely kind of Buddhist type ceremony with saying of things and lighting of things and moving of things. And then people do an embu and everyone goes, that was weird.
That is absolutely.
We got a lovely certificate as well. So I've got my wedding, my marriage certificate. And we've got a separate kind of, so Mrs. did this lovely Japanese calligraphy certificate to say that he officiated at this ceremony, and yeah, that was really nice.
That's amazing. And everyone wore robes and everything. So did we? No, yeah, I don't know. It was your wedding. I didn't get invited. I was just a white belt at the time, so.
Mizuno Sensei wore a robe. The guys doing the embu wore like the gi with the black thing on top and the big weird ropey thing.
Yeah. Ahoy.
I don't know if I because everyone joked, oh, you're gonna get married in your dogi.
Yeah.
No. I'm married in the wedding dress. I don't think I had to put anything else on.
Oh, good.
I think I just wore my normal wedding dress. I don't remember.
I'm just always fascinated, like, you're the only person I know who's had a Kempo wedding, and it was officiated by our aide Dan, and I find that like, I've never had the guts to ask you, so no, this is my time. We're going to move on to talking about your career in a moment, but I just wanted to check the room and see if everyone had questions about your journey. I suppose before we moved on as well, I wanted to talk about why you left and where you'd got to in terms of, I think we talked just before the call about gender expectations. I think, I think that, as I said, this is a club that's predominantly frequented by people who identify as female. And so I wondered if you wanted to, just talk about that, or if there's, but before that, was there any questions? Going to say no, and I'm going to.
That was going to be my question. So
that was going to be your question. Excellent. Ask it, and then I'll cut it into the video. So go for it.
Just curious why you left Kempo, and what are you doing now if you left? So are you doing anything else? Just chilling.
So I left, I think. So I trained for 10 years. I come to London for a year. I moved back, and when I moved back, I was doing a lot of teaching. We're a university club, so we have that throughput of students, new students all the time, and a lot of teaching to be done. There was some sandans, there was some shodans. I think I was the only nidan in Scotland. So I had no one really to train with at my level. I enjoyed the teaching part. I really enjoyed teaching, but you need to train yourself as well to kind of up your skills and get new ideas and refresh yourself. So that was quite difficult. I think I find the Sandan curriculum, I know the curriculum has changed a little bit. The Sandan curriculum I found impractical for me. I'm 5'3", I'm a woman, I'm quite large chested, and some of the techniques, I was like, I would never do this. I would just never in a million years turn my back to my assailant, put their arm underneath and hold it here. I'm just never going to do that. So I was like questioning the curriculum, which you can't do. And I just found the techniques difficult and impractical, but mainly difficult. I just find a lot of them quite difficult, and having no regular training partner made it even more so. And then towards the end, so I was getting quite disillusioned a little bit with the whole thing. At the same time, there's a lot of political stuff going on. That was when the BSKF, as was the single unitary BSKF, sort of was having a lot of discussions with Japan and it was all very strange to me. I didn't quite understand people going to sit down and work it out, and there was a lot of very personal attacks going on and cults of personality going on, and I thought that this is not what I signed up for. I signed up because this was a very open, very friendly, very cooperative kind of martial art, as much as it can be being a martial art. And this kind of infighting and separation, and I'm on your side, you're on my side, I just didn't like it. Then when I was sort of thinking, what do I do here? Do I rumble on, or do I give up, or what do I do? I got pregnant. But even before that, Kavita, you were asking about gender expectations. When I got to Nidan, I think, was probably about the time. So my husband, who was one of also a club instructor, was expected to take on the Glasgow club. Another guy left, so he was expected to kind of inherit the Glasgow club. And almost everyone would say to me, so are you going to teach a kids class or something? And why? We don't have a kids class. Why would I set one up? And it was basically, oh, that's what the women do. It's a way for the women to keep training, because the men will keep training no matter what. There was lots of relationships in the club, both in Glasgow and in London. I wasn't aware of any same-sex relationships. You may correct me, Kavita, but at the time I don't remember any. Lots of men getting together with girls, lots of men and women, and the men would carry on training and would progress through the ranks, and the women would usually give up at some point, or teach a kids class, because when you have kids, you can take them along with you. So there was a lot. Yeah, I was kind of expected almost to do that, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't really want to do Kempo all that much, or I was debating it in my own mind. And then, yeah, I got pregnant and just decided to stop training for the duration of the pregnancy. But literally, while I was in the hospital, having just had my baby, my husband was like on the phone in the kind of family room next door to London, to Japan, to wherever, to Bristol, to Plymouth and Portsmouth, or wherever clubs were, trying to gather support for this new formation of the SKF that we're trying to make up and trying to organise a split. And I was like, really? This is our life now? No, we have a baby. So then having had the baby, he kept on training. I then had the choice of, well, what do? I can't take the baby with me. I was in a situation a lot of women in those kind of partnerships was like, well, what do? You're not going to take the baby with you. You're not going to stop training. So I have to stop training. But it wasn't, I think if I'd been determined to carry on, we could have maybe worked something out where we each trained one day a week or something. But I was kind of coming to the end of my Kempo life anyway, I think. And that year, the whole political thing just blew up, and I thought, I don't want to have anything to do with this. And yeah, so then I just stopped.
We lost some great people during the sort of the political split, I think, and we shouldn't dwell on that too much. But I think so the club is invited down to Bristol next month, and I'm really excited about that, because actually Jenny and Mike, who you probably know, remember quite well, Jenny has continued to train, and they do exactly what you've described, which is that Mike's actually has taken a step away from running the Bristol club, and we've got someone else, Nikki, who's taken over, but actually that allows him to focus on the international stuff, which obviously, as you said, spend a lot of time on the phone, and then Jenny gets to, and I think they too also have 2 children now, so it's sort of 2 boys as it happens, where you have 2 girls. So yeah, so they get to do that. So I think there isn't much on the path. There aren't anyone. I don't think there's that many people blazing the way for women who happen to be older and parents.
There was like two. There was Binny Barnes, who I used to meet at seminars and got on with very well, and she had kids, and still trained and still taught. And there was the Japanese female sensei whose name I've forgotten. Tiny woman.
Yeah.
Yasuo Sensei.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sensei. We
Yeah.
love Yasuo Sensei.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But they were the only two senior, and like by senior, like over second dan, women around. There wasn't really anyone else.
Yeah, and so that's also changed because Kat and I are third dan and Nikki is fourth dan. So I think that's changed. And then obviously Kat, who's a Glasgow, who's the current Glasgow branch master, she's also a director of BSKF. And so I think this new entity we've got has had at some points it's had predominantly female directorship. So it's sort of,
great. See, I trained Kat as well, so it's I'm responsible for all of this.
Exactly. Why do you think I wanted you on here? Because you trained Kat. Do you remember the moment that we met Kat? You just said, do not go into randori with her. Do you remember?
Yeah, she was fierce from day one, just absolutely like a little cat, like, oh, Jesus, you live up to your name.
And thankfully
I was once asked before a Takai to fight the Dan grade females or fight the Q grade men, and I went, fight the men. Captain the Dan grade group. I'm not going there. There's two of them there, but Kat is one of them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to flip over to your work life and talk about, one of the things I have a very strong memory of thinking, being on the phone to you and going, oh, I do this kind of geeky tech stuff, and it's like, and I don't get paid enough and I deserve to be paid. And you were like, I work in the most important thing and I don't get paid enough, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm such a jerk. And I remember thinking I'm such a brotopia wannabe. I think I think I'll let you explain what you do and your journey, because you'll do a better job than I will.
Yeah. Well, the reason I was in London is I came down to do a master's in human rights. My undergraduate degree was in politics. And I always wanted to do something along those kind of lines. So I came down, and the course was one draw, doing Kempo was another draw. So there was a kind of double reason to move to London. So I got my master's and I was like, well, what do I do with this now? Because before I left for London, I'd got engaged and he wouldn't move to London. There was multiple opportunities, obviously, in London to do human rights related stuff. I'd been doing an internship with Amnesty International. My course mates were going off to work in Geneva and New York, and he was like, I've lived in London before, I'm not coming down there again, so you better come back up. So trotted off back to Glasgow. We're not together anymore, just in case this is he's not in the next room or anything, he's quite far away. So yeah, I worked while I was in London. I worked to support myself because I'm not independently wealthy. So I had worked doing supported employment with MenCat, and a small project in South London as well. But yeah, so supporting adults with learning disabilities to get into work. And that is what I'd done as a volunteer in Sweden when I did my gap here. I worked in a Camp Hill village, which is a community for adults with learning disabilities. So I came back and I found a job doing advocacy. So advocacy mainly for, at that time it was adults with learning disabilities. Again, we then kind of expanded into kind of physical disability. Then we took on a children and young persons project for any child or young person with any kind of disability, mental health issue, health condition, anything. And I worked there for about 8 years, 7, 8 years.
I think it was there you started talking to me about transgender rights and
Yes, yes. So I then focused mainly on children and young people. And we had so that's where I first met my first deaf clients that got me interested in what I do now. But we also had a lot of referrals we had one referral from LGBT youth in Glasgow who very tentatively reached out and said, we have a young person who could do with some support, well, basically, are you okay with that? And we're like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we be? So I supported this young person who was transgender and was going through transition and had been kicked out of home and had come from up north, a very small community up north, and had found himself in Glasgow, homeless, all that kind of thing. So I supported them. And then the next thing we get like 3 or 4 more referrals from LGBT youth going, we've actually got more. We've got a lot of young people going through a lot of things. So I did a fair few fair few kind of clients from them. And I mean, I hadn't really done much work in that department before because it'd been mainly disability that I'd worked with before, but we always treat people as individuals. I mean, that was always our mantra. People are people. And, we can work with 3 different people with cerebral palsy. They've all got different needs and they've all got different abilities, capabilities, and different requirements. And it was no different from anyone else. So, I worked with, I think in the end, 3 young people that I worked with directly, all very, very different stories, but, still in need of advocacy support and the ultimate aim of getting them to be a bit more empowered about their own rights and be able to kind of advocate for themselves and find out what they were entitled to and make their own way in the world without our help. So I did that for a while, and then I moved to work at the disability service of a local university. And again, so that was I was kind of managing the team of disability advisors. So they were catering for, again, all kinds of disabilities, mental health issues, medical conditions, and we saw the full range of students from, when you name it, we saw it. And that was interesting again because we had a lot of students come to us who were part of the LGBT community, and we did a lot of work with them and kind of tried to support and make sure that the university was responsive to what they needed and understood their situation. But they weren't coming to us because they were gay or because they were trans, because that's not our service. We're a disability service. It was because their mental health was being affected or their physical health was being affected by society, by the barriers they'd been facing, by, discrimination, by everything else. So we ended up, myself and a colleague ended up doing a big project about, we tried to frame it, we had to keep within the disability kind of package because that's what our team was. But basically it was talking about gender and kind of slightly wider LGBT issues, but a lot about kind of transgender and kind of gender issues and how that intersects with disability. And there's no one really knows why, but there's a high crossover between autism and people who are transgender. No one knows why. There's reports saying, yes, there's a correlation. We can definitely prove there's a correlation. There's much higher incidence among both populations, but we don't know why. So it meant that all the autistic students we had coming into the service, a good portion of them were having gender issues. And some were transitioning, some were just questioning, some were...
Is that true of a range of, what's it called, cognitive disorders?
I think they don't know. They don't really know. And interestingly, I now work with the deaf community, and so I left that job to train to be a sign language interpreter because I've met a lot of deaf clients, and my interest kind of went in that direction. I've always been interested in languages, and deaf people seem to be particularly marginalised among the group that I was working with, and I thought this is an interesting area to go into, and went that way. There seems to be a very prominent gay LGBT community within the deaf community, and
so
there's a lot. I mean, of all the deaf people I know, a good chunk of them identify as being under the LGBT community. It was like much more so than you would think in the general population. And I'm like, well, there's something going on there that I don't know if anyone's researched either. I suspect there's no research.
Yeah, so that's what G is saying on the chat, that it hasn't been researched. I don't know if you're able to comment on that, G. Don't know if you've got more knowledge than I do.
Hi, yeah, my work is in neurodiversity studies. Can you hear me?
Not quite. So I think you just need, the mic needs to be closer, probably.
No, the mic is still my face.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what it is.
That's a bit better, whatever that was.
Okay. Yeah, so this has been researched. So gender, this is more about gender diversity than about sexuality. So the autistic population, there is a much higher rate who are neurodivergent, who are trans or non-binary, and there's increasing research on that. But for example, ADHD studies, which is my area, there's no research on that. Like some, for example, folks with intersex conditions, there's a higher rate of ADHD, but nobody actually knows. Like in the ADHD research, nobody knows anything which isn't, like medical. Yeah, so the knowledge just simply doesn't exist because funding goes elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
But again, yeah, it's about gender diversity, not sexuality.
Yeah.
No, that's really useful to know. Yeah, I feel like, so I didn't know that until 2 minutes ago. So this is really interesting to me. So I'm really glad that we've got both of you on the call talking about that. I'm conscious of time, and you were going to talk about what you do currently, and then I'd love for you to talk about how you think we could be more inclusive as a club as well in some of these areas.
Yeah, so having worked in a kind of very broad disability mental health area for a long time, I can now specialise and work with deaf people as a sign language interpreter. And yeah, I'm doing that. I don't know what else to say about that. I mainly work in colleges. For the moment, I've done my course. I went back to uni to do another master's or a diploma type thing. I'm
gonna jump in and help you actually and say, one of the questions that Ophelia asked you earlier is, what else do you do instead now? And I know that one of the things you do is drum. And one of the things I find fascinating is when you do sign languaging for songs. I love seeing that. And I know you introduced me to that. And yeah, queer.
That's turned out to be a whole controversial thing. You see, now I don't do that anymore because.
Oh, really? Tell me about the controversy. We're on recording though.
So no, it's fine. So yeah, I started learning sign language years and years ago because combination of having deaf clients at the advocacy service, and we happened to be in the same building as the British Deaf Association, who offered lessons. So it was convenient. I went in, it was great, and I've just taken it from there. And it's like anything. It's exposure to a new community. It's a learning experience. And sign language obviously is very visual, it's very expressive, and I am not naturally a very expressive kind of person. So a few years ago, I needed to really work on that part of my sign language. And I thought one way to do that might be to combine my love of music. So I go to gigs, concerts, I play drums. I had a little band for a while, but we've disbanded. So I started to try and sort of force myself to do sign songs, to take a song that I love or that I know and do it in sign language. And it did the job for me. It helped me to think about things in a different way and helped me work on my expressiveness. But there's an attitude. There's a lot of problems within again, like any community has differing, you can ask 100 people, get 100 different views. But within the deaf community, there's certainly an awareness of when hearing people, non-deaf people, basically cultural appropriation. Learn a little bit of sign language, make a YouTube channel, do these sign songs that aren't always particularly well done or aren't in full sign language will just basically, because sign language, all sign languages have their own structure and grammar. It's not just a case of signing each word as it goes along in English order. The structure's all turned around. You've got phrases that are one sign. You've got one word in English that needs 6 different signs. So, there's a problem with hearing people learning a little bit of sign language, not being part of the community, making a YouTube channel or TikTok or whatever, going and being viral and getting a lot of attention and a lot of praise from people who don't know any better. That's fantastic, that's great, that looks amazing. Yeah, but it's gibberish. So there are some great texts. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, and that just going to bring it back to Kempo, which was that just that's what we went through when we talked about earlier in the year. Would you come and sign a class? You were very adamant that actually we need to find someone from the community who's,
yeah. So there are some great deaf performers, and sometimes when you see like at festivals, you see someone up on the stage and they'll go viral. Sometimes they're actually deaf performers who have learned the song or look for cues or can feel the vibrations at a certain point in the song and can match their signing with the song. And they've basically memorized the entire set list of a band, which is an incredible skill in itself. Some of them are hearing interpreters, but some of them are deaf performers. So there's been a bit of a shift, and there's been a lot of criticism of certain people over the last few years that if anyone's going to do sign songs and get recognition and fame for it, it should be deaf people, because it's their language, their culture. They should get the credit, because why should we come over and take over? So I kind of stopped doing that a little bit. So you asked about whether we could sort of interpret a Kempo session, and if it was and what I said was, if it was a live teaching session, then it would be appropriate for someone like me, an interpreter, to come along, hear what you're saying and sign that out to any deaf participants. Fantastic. If it's about putting stuff on your out on your YouTube channel or on your website or on social media, a pre-recorded thing, it's better to get a deaf person to do that. And there are deaf interpreters and there are deaf people who just do media stuff, because deaf people have historically not been given opportunities for employment or jobs or education or anything. So it's best practice for us as hearing people who are part of the deaf community to give those opportunities over to deaf people where possible. So if I get asked to do from work, if the college says, we've got a new document, can you sign it and we'll put it up on the website? The best thing for us to say is, no, can you find a deaf person to do that? A suitably qualified deaf person, not any old random off the street, but someone who has got a good level of signing, who's been trained to do that kind of media thing, and the opportunity should go to them first. Just like, and also there's now, so I'm part of it. I signed up to an agency for jobs, and there's now a big push to have any LGBT community jobs come out. It should be someone from that community, ideally, first and foremost. If you can find someone, an interpreter from the community, they should get a job. Likewise, if it's a Black Lives Matter event, it should be an interpreter of colour who does that. And there are specific networks. There's a Interpreters of Colour network who are promoting that and saying, no, look, if you've got any kind of a requirement for an interpreter for your events, can you please come to us, because someone from the community, whether it be the Asian community or a Black person, is far better to understand the terminology and the culture of that community, and it will provide a better service, will interpret better because they know what it's all about, rather than just some random coming in and making the best effort, which will do it a push, and when some access is better than no access, but people who have that identify that themselves or from the community themselves will always do a better job than an outsider.
But you aren't you from the Kempo community? Is the question here in our chat. I think you are from the Kempo community.
yeah. So I think that's why if it was a class, I'd be happy to provide interpretation for a class, because I've got the Kempo background.
Yeah.
So that counts for something.
I really relate to what you're saying. I don't think anyone on this call, except yourself, although you may correct me, are natively like English speakers. So we, except maybe Ophelia counts because her mum is, and but yes. So I think all of us have parents who aren't. And so I think, yeah, I know from growing up in that Hindi climate and then listening to the BBC massacre it in movies and stuff, that something feels quite authentic with what you're saying about getting the right person to do the interpretation. I was listening to somebody today that was really ironic. They were interpreting a Taliban member as saying that women's rights will be maintained. And they happened to be a woman interpreter, so it was like a really strange moment. We have another message. Oh, okay, no.
Was it at the North Korea or Burma or somewhere? There was a television interpreter who was basically the sign language interpreter, kind of just suddenly mid-flow went, what they're saying is bollocks, I'm going to tell you the truth, and just switched and gave out the message like the government is corrupt, the government is lying, here I'm going to tell you what's really going on. And obviously no one is any the wiser apart from the deaf community. I went, oh my god.
That's amazing.
It's really interesting. Like part of the course was learning about even translation, about, because if you're translating a text or a document or a book or anything, there's choices to be made, and doesn't matter if it's a woman in a translation will be different from a man who's doing the translation, or someone, again, if it's a gay writer and someone who's not gay might not pick up on the subtle clues about the language, and especially if it's an older text, and might not quite make the right relevant translation. So it's really fascinating to look into the whole world of interpreting and translation. We look a lot at spoken languages, obviously, as well as sign language, and who you are and what your identity is affects how you translate. It can't help but do that.
Oh no, that sounds really, it's really great. I'm at the end of my questions. I feel like I got to ask them all today, which is very exciting. Not quite what we do when we catch up in person. Come up to Glasgow. Does anyone have any last thoughts or questions?
Am I doing any other martial arts since Kempo? No. So as I said, I had my first child. She's now just turned 12. And then I had a second child 4 years after. So I was just sort of getting back into normal life, and then had another one. And then not long after I had my second child, then myself and my husband split up. So I've been a single parent for the past 6 years. So that doesn't really lend itself to going out and doing activities, because I've got 2 children who I need to be here for all the time. So no, I didn't. I've never really, and you know what, I think because having found Kempo, it's kind of spoiled other martial arts. Like at the Olympics, Taekwondo, and going, there's no defence there, that's rubbish. And Judo going, just punch him in the face.
And I was like, this is terrible. What is this I'm looking at?
The karate, I was interested to look at the karate, but I was like, just do this. You can take them down so easily. So I think there's nothing else compares. I think if I did any other martial art, I would just find it lacking, which is a shame. And yeah, so I've not really got into anything, and that other than that, I don't really do any. I mean, I cycle. I tried running. I was bad at running. I sometimes go cycling when the kids go to their dad, in terms of physical activity, but yeah, I don't really. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, and I was walking a lot, but I've got a bit of an injury in my foot. I can't even walk. So now it's just like I'm just sitting here getting fat. I need to find something else to do.
Well, we might just have to get you online and book you for a class, and then you'll have to sign your way, and then maybe we'll get you back in. So this is a call out for everyone on the call. We do now have on the website that we are able to book Ruth for a session. We're going to update the Outsabi platform to also say that, but if you have people who are, you know, not trying the sport because they need an interpreter, then we now have one. So any last questions for Ruth before, because I'm like nearly at the end of our hour? No. Well, I'm going to wrap it up formally there. So thank you very much, Ruth. We will, I know your address, but I will reconfirm it and we'll send you some Camden Kempo merch, because that's what we do, and probably some sweeties. So yeah, just and then no doubt we will be up in Glasgow, because when was the last time we went, Ophelia? It was a while ago.
2019.
2019. You will remember that, Ruth? I couldn't. Did I see you? Did I not be able? Was that the one where I couldn't walk after the seminar?
That seems quite recent. Did we see you then?
Maybe yeah, I will. Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking about you today and saying what I was doing. And Jessica remembers you as the lady who brought the little computer.
Yeah, that was.
I now say to her, she's got her own laptop now for high school. So I said, get that in that laptop and do amazing things with it, because you can. Sarah, I think, still calls you Belvita.
Excellent. Belvita is better than, you know, some things I'm called. So
what was I watching? And there was a character called Kavita in it, but they called it Kavita.
Oh yeah, like.
What was it? Oh, well, I can't remember what program I was watching. I was like, oh, there's a Kavita.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's like the proper way to say it.
That's what Ranjit calls you as well.
Oh yes, Kavita. Kavita, I think, is what it's meant to be. So I'm going to, well, I will do this in the time-honored way. Rachel, wadamas.
Great.
Thank you so much. Arigato gozaimasu.
All right.
And I will start recording.
You know about me, cause I've read my game. You can't hold me back, it's driving you insane. Drink, sleep, repeat, let's go.